Hello, you all. It's officially 4:30, so we are going to get started. We have folks who are joining us online. We have folks in the room. We have a lot to pack in this hour. So first of all, I want to make sure that everyone has their candy, everyone in the room. Please, if you have it, if you don't have it, we have our wonderful friend and colleague and co-conspirator Karen is outside giving it to everyone, so make sure you get it. We need to power up. I am Jen Stowe, and I'm so happy to be with you all today. Welcome to our panel. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on our run of show. So we are going to talk about care today. It's important to all of us. As we like to say, care is in the air. So you're going to hear from my co-moderator and our panelists. We're going to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about what we do, and we're also going to give you a little bit of information about our care stories, because we all have them, right? Then we're going to go dig into discussion, which is going to be great, and then we're going to take questions from all of you. So if you have any questions, sit tight, know that they'll be answered by the end of the panel. Before we go into introductions, I want to do a little one-question survey. So just raise your hand if you have taken care of somebody or if you have been taken care of in your life. Let me see what kind of participation we have. And for the folks coming in, the question is, raise your hand if you have taken care of somebody or if you have been taken care of. Put your hand up. Okay, if you can. Okay. I think that's everybody. So I'm proving a point that, like, we all have been either taken care of or we take care of folks. So care really is critical in all of our lives. So that's why we're here today, and I'm really happy to have you with us. I will introduce myself first. I am Jen Stowe. I'm the Executive Director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, also known as NDWA. NDWA fights for the recognition, rights, and fairness for nannies, house cleaners, and home care workers all over the United States. We have a huge network of 70 affiliates and chapters. I have my colleagues here. I'm so happy to see them. We have been in existence for the past 15 years. My care story is super personal, of course. My grandmother was a domestic worker. She just turned 91. Her name is Willie Fairstowe. She cleaned houses, and she loved what she did. She did that work in North Carolina. She was not able to have access to rights like Social Security. She was not able to have a sick day. She was not able to have any sort of paid leave. And so I really do this work in honor of her. I'm also a single mother myself. I have a 15-year-old daughter. I had her when I was in college. I had no access to childcare. It was incredibly difficult. And so I really understood from a very young age care infrastructure and how important it was, and how we are in a crisis, still in a crisis. 15 years ago, we were in a crisis. We're still in a crisis in this country. I am going to pass it to my co-moderator, Kristen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everyone for being here. Care, as you just heard from Jen, impacts everyone, and we're all in this fight to put care in the air together. My name is Kristen Rao-Finkbeiner. I'm Executive Director of Moms Rising, an organization of over 1 million people in every state in the nation working to increase family economic security, to stop discrimination, and to, importantly, build a nation where every single person can thrive. Every single person. Every single person. And that means we have to build a care infrastructure. What happens when we don't have one? We all have stories. Everybody in the audience has stories. We don't have time for people to share stories in small groups today, but we encourage you to share stories with each other, with your friends, with your family after you leave here, and with your elected officials. So my care story is that when I had my son, he was born with a primary immune deficiency. We didn't plan on that happening. We didn't know that was going to happen. I was expecting to go immediately back to work and stay in the labor force. But I didn't have any paid family medical leave. Like millions and millions of people in this country, I did not have any paid family medical leave. We are one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have any paid family medical leave, and that is despite going through a pandemic. And so I was pushed out of the labor force, and we saw that just happen in the pandemic, where millions of people were pushed out of much-needed jobs. And I was one of those people when my son was younger. And then we went into childcare situation. So now I have a high-needs kid. He couldn't necessarily be in big groups of children for childcare because a cold meant hospital trips. And so I also wasn't able to have childcare, so then I was pushed out of the labor force for even longer. Again, my story is shared by millions of people. Childcare in most states in the nation costs more than college. And what we have is a situation right now in the United States of America where being a mom is a greater predictor of wage and hiring discrimination than gender, and where moms of color are experiencing, because of structural racism, compounded health and economic harms, to the extent that Latina moms are earning just 46 cents to a white dad's dollar, and black moms are earning just 54 cents to a white dad's dollar. This is not okay. This is a situation where we together are in crisis. Everybody in this country is in crisis. We are in the same burning building, but in different rooms with different impacts. And so we know that when we're having that, we can come together to create massive structural change, and that's what we're here to do today. We're here to rise up. We're here to eat candy. We're here to have fun. We're here to change our country for the better, and we know we can do it. And so thank you, and I pass to April.
Oh my God, I gotta follow this.
I was thinking, I'm glad I'm not sitting next to
We're fired up, clearly.
This woman is amazing, and her energy is like this all the time.
Even at 5 in the morning, I can say.
Yes, but I love it. I'm April Verrett, and for the last 6 weeks, I was just elected to be Secretary-Treasurer of SEIU. Woo! And I am still, for the next 5 months or so, the president of SEIU Local 2015, where we represent 400,000 caregivers across the state of California, predominantly home care workers that are women of color, immigrants. And I've also chaired the National SEIU Home Care Council that represents 700,000 home care workers across our country. And it's important for you all to know that about me, because I have been able to dedicate my life to being a leader and a fierce advocate and a fighter with some of the most passionate, caring, loving people I know who are home care workers, who have made a choice to dedicate their lives to taking care of people who need a little bit of help. And it is the most compassionate, loving, caring work that all of you all, if you are lucky, will have access to someday. But the reality is that millions of people in this country, whether they are a senior who may just need somebody to come in and cook a meal for them, or clean for them, or help them with their bathing, right, or make sure they get their medication, or you are a person living with a disability, and you may need someone to help get you up out of the bed and dressed and off to work every day. Right? These jobs that we don't necessarily think about until we need them or until we have a loved one that needs them. But millions of people across this country don't have access to this life-saving, life-affirming care, nor do the workers that give the care are able to provide decent wages, a decent life for their family, because they earn poverty wages, because they don't have access to life-sustaining benefits, because they don't know how they will retire one day, because they don't have access to retirement security. And more often than not in this country, these caregivers are women. They are women of color. They are immigrants. And I say, in the year 2022, it's a sin and a shame that you can't make a choice to be a valuable person in our society that makes a choice to do a job centered in love, because you aren't able to love your family the way you need to love your family and take care of them. And so that's why I've dedicated my career to building power with these workers in order to make the transformational and structural change that we heard Kristen talk about. And I've just been really proud to be in this movement to drive and create a care economy, because I really think after this pandemic, all that we have survived, we're talking about the essential workers who were on the front lines. Without caregivers, all of us who sat at home, right, during the pandemic would not have been able to. yet they continued to go out and put their masks on and stare this pandemic in the face and continue to do the work. And I'll be damned if I don't make sure this country gives back to them every single thing that they deserve.
That's right.
Well, then I have to go after you. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Comans. I actually just recently started working with Moms Rising. I work here in Allegheny County. I am home. This is my hometown as the campaign director for the fellowship program. So I get a chance to work with a lot of moms in the region to help them advocate about their stories when we talk about care. I am also a marketing and communications professional with a local nonprofit organization. And I am also a school board director in a neighborhood right outside the city of Pittsburgh called Wilkinsburg. So I get an opportunity to really come across a lot of different families, a lot of different people, and living through different experiences. So this conversation, when we're talking about care, is really important for me, and it's personal. I'm a mom. I have 2 young children. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I also have a 3-month-old son at home right now. And I've got 2 different stories. So when I had my daughter 3 years ago, I was a contractor. As a contractor, you don't have any benefits. So right after I had my daughter, 2 weeks later, I was right back to work. I know that in that particular experience, I had a few privileges. I was able to bring my daughter to work with me. I was able to have flexibility dealing with going back to work so soon, but despite that, it still didn't make it easy. You know, I am trying to juggle a new baby, learn how to be a new mom, and breastfeed, and, you know, all the things that come with entering into motherhood, and it wasn't easy, but we made it. 7 months after having her, the pandemic hit. So then I lost my job. Fortunately, my husband still was working. He worked from home, and I was able to collect unemployment, but we were just in a space of uncertainty because here we are again, no job, you know, technically 1 income, and a pandemic. So with that, I was able to keep my daughter home, fortunately, so we didn't have to pay for childcare. But once we got back to work, that still doesn't make it easy, even though you're working from home, not having to pay for childcare. It's hard. So we were able to push through that. And then 3 years later, I am just coming off of a maternity leave with my son, who is 3 months old. But with that, I did have, I took 11 weeks, but in that 11 weeks, I had to use all of my PTO, all of my sick time. And so now I'm back to work where technically I'm a little bit in the negative with my sick time. I think they gave me some time, and this upcoming pay period, I will have come out of the red. But I had to use all my time. So now that's a worry for me of, well, what happens if I get sick? What happens if my kid is sick? You know, will I have to juggle going back to work and taking care of my kid because I don't have time off to just focus on my family? So both of those experiences have just shown me that this doesn't work. And then I think another caveat to all of that, and being a resident in this particular region, is we just had a gender equity study come out maybe about 3 years ago, and this is the worst region for a Black woman to live when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to career, when it comes to just wanting to thrive. This particular region, the systems in place make it worse. So that has been my personal experience as to why we can't stop. I actually brought my daughter here yesterday, and she's, like I said, she's 3, and we're talking about what we're here for. She was like, well, Mommy, why are you here? Why are you speaking? And I was like, because there's a bunch of people here who want to make the world a better place for you. I'm getting emotional because she's so sweet. And she says, just for me? And then she was like, well, what about Bo? That's her brother. I was like, for him too. And she was like, and my daddy? And I was like, yes, and your dad? And she goes, her grandma, her friends. And I'm like, yes, everybody. Everybody is here because we want to do work and make the world a better place for you. And so just like April said, I'll be damned if my daughter is where I'm at when she's my age, fighting for the same things, because it doesn't have to be this way.
That's right.
I always think when I sit on these panels, like, oh, why am I sitting up here? I'm not the expert, and then I have to follow folks with these amazing stories. But then I remind myself that I'm a storyteller, and I'm representing a group of single mothers. I'm the founder of Single Mom Defined, which rewrites society's narrative about Black single mothers and also connects all single moms, regardless of race, income, religion, to each other and to resources. And I was brought into this work because we collect stories for Paid Leave, for Moms Rising, and for other organizations. Because when I first started, I thought, like, oh my goodness, this is such a massive amount of work to do. How do I go about doing it? And we decided to just share stories and form relationships with moms. So when groups come to us, they don't feel, especially as Black women, we don't feel exploited. Like, we don't feel like, oh, it's just we're giving our struggle story, but then we're never centered within the policies such as paid family and medical leave. And my day job is I am also the founder of Motormouth Multimedia, which is a collective of creatives and consultants of color. And because Pittsburgh isn't the best place for people of color to live, I decided that if we're able to assemble groups of creatives and consultants, we can better compete for jobs and scale up and down, and they're able to work on really big contracts that they wouldn't work on otherwise, contracts such as storytelling. And I'll share some of those stories a little bit later, but to share my personal story, I became a single mom. I was dumped during my second trimester and decided to move back home, moved in with my family, and so took time off, not really time off because like at that point I wasn't working, and that's when I started a parenting website that kind of grew and morphed into Single Mom Defined, but did not have anything, and was able to fortunately have that safety net of my family. My father and mother recently celebrated 50 plus years of marriage, and growing up, he always said, if you're gonna stay at home sick, you might as well go to work and make money. And he was in construction, and I was thinking, and that's just the mindset that, especially many Black families that I know that don't get like paid off days have. It's like you go to work no matter what, and that's kind of what I did, which isn't always smart. And now my care story is that my mother, who most recently had a stroke. She had already suffered dementia, but it advanced the dementia. So even before coming here, we're doing things. I'm taking her to get blood tests and labs done. My sister, who works as our sales and marketing director, she was talking to me on the phone about this panel on my way, and she's taking her to the grocery store. And we're blessed to where we have a business and we're able to do that. But because there's not a state or national program that allows me to pay into that, like, I don't take off. It's like I'm always, it's like work. I recently got to the point where I take vacations. I go on solo trips now just because I have to reset and realign. But, this work is so important, and it's so important to not just think about someone like myself that's in a more fortunate situation now, but the thousands of mothers we have. I think 16,000 moms nationwide and a couple thousand here in Pittsburgh that are single moms and only have one income. So they can't afford to take off, and many lose their jobs when they do.
Thanks, Heather. I just want to start by saying I love these women. They're great. My name is Dawn Hucklebridge, and I'm the director of Paid Leave for All. And we are the national campaign of the organizations leading the fight, wait, it's a mouthful, leading the fight for paid family and medical leave for every working person in this country. And I like to start this with a quick pop quiz. Who knows how many countries in the world have no paid leave? 6. I hear 1. Any other guesses? So we said for a long time it was 2. It was US and Papua New Guinea. Since then, they've discovered a few other very small island nations, I think 5 more. But the point remains, as Kristen said earlier, we are one of the only countries in the world that guarantees no form of paid leave for its workers. So what does that mean in our lives every day? It means that uniquely in America, do 1 in 4 people go back to work after they give birth within 2 weeks? Like we heard some of the people at this table. 2 weeks. It means that uniquely in America, do working people have to choose between, let's say, recovering from cancer or quarantining with a deadly virus and making the rent? And uniquely in America, do many of us, in fact, most of us, miss our baby's first smile or our parents' last breath? So my personal care story, I tell a lot, and I always want to start by saying it's a very lucky one. It's a very lucky one because when I gave birth, I did have a little bit of paid leave. It wasn't enough, and I had to kind of make it work and scrap things together, but I had some. I had health care, a supportive family, no serious complications. But nonetheless, that experience changed me forever, and it nearly broke me. And I don't know if anyone here has experienced or knows about colic, but my son had it pretty bad, which meant he really didn't sleep for a year, which meant I really didn't sleep for a year. And it meant I didn't sit very much, I didn't eat very much, I couldn't stop losing weight, and the only reason that I was able to hold on to my job is because my parents were able to come and help. And they would hold him, because otherwise he would scream. They would hold him while I worked. They would hold him while I showered sometimes. And I just remember I was exhausted to the bone. I was desperate. I hurt all the time, and I worked all the time. But what I kept thinking was, if it is this hard for me, how do the more than 3 in 4 workers in this country with no paid family leave at all survive? And honestly, I still don't know the answer to that question. It is a feat of strength and resilience, like the stories you've heard today, that no one should have to go through. And frankly, most of the world does not go through. So when I heard in 2019 that organizations were coming together to form the Paid Leave for All campaign, I jumped at that opportunity. And we launched in December of 2019. Of course, not knowing that just a couple of months later, we would be hit by a global pandemic. And we were still getting off the ground. We basically had a website. And a great board that had started it. And I was fundraising, and I had no staff. But we went into fast forward because we knew what was at stake. And we knew what it meant to have a pandemic in a country with no paid leave. And we know who would bear the burden. That it would be, as always, women of color in particular, caregivers, the essential workers who continue to carry us. We knew what it would mean for them. So with my board, we developed a war room, forgive the military term, and we won a temporary law in 2020 that did provide temporary and limited paid leave for workers across America. And what we know now is that, as limited as it was, it prevented more than 15,000 COVID cases every single day. They've done studies already. We know that it saved countless jobs, countless lives, countless families. And at the height of the pandemic, in December of that year, Congress let it expire. So we pivoted, immediately said, we have to get this done permanently. We're going to get this over the finish line. We should have had this well before a pandemic hit. And by God, we should have it now. And we've had a lot of success. And of course, as we'll talk about, we've had some setbacks. It has been heartbreaking. And it's been the honor of my life. And I am committed with the women here, and I hope everyone here today, to getting these policies done. Thanks.
We clearly have a powerful coalition of women, seriously, I'm inspired every time I hear each of them tell their own stories. I think it's so powerful, and it just underscores that this is heart work. Like, we could be doing a lot of different other things. Like, we choose to do this work as a calling. I am going to ask some of the panelists a little rapid-fire question. So the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, and it was signed by President Biden this week. It was a historical bill. There were a lot of wonderful things in the bill that included climate change, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and things like that. But we know that care was not in the bill. We've been fighting for 18 months for investments to be in the bill, but they weren't in the bill. I want to ask my panelists really to spend 30 seconds just to talk about why care should have been in this bill. And April, if you can kick us off.
Sure. There should have been an investment in home and community-based services that would have allowed for the 700,000 or more people with disabilities and seniors that are languishing on waiting lists for home care services across the country. An investment would have allowed those folks to have access to care, and it would have created a pathway for the workers that deliver care to earn at least $15 an hour and have an ability to form organizations of their own to continue to advocate for themselves and for those that they care for.
That's right.
We should have done that.
We certainly should have done that, and we know that the average home care worker makes $17,000 a year. You can't make that and take care of your family at the same time. So Ashley, I'm going to go to you.
So when I hear that question, it makes me think about saving a life. I think Pennsylvania in general, when we think about the care of moms who are having babies, maternal mortality, infant mortality, care in this package is going to save lives. And it's kind of unfortunate that to understand that it's going to be life-saving, that it's not important to keep it on the table. So,
It's okay. We can be mad. Okay. Heather, let me go to you.
So when I think of policies and laws and different things, I think of like the people that are behind that, right? When we collected stories, Bernie couldn't take off time to take care of her mom, who died of breast cancer. Shortly after that, her 15-year-old little sister died of a heart condition. Janaea had a miscarriage, went immediately back to work. Michelle had a baby and went back to work when the baby was only a couple weeks old, which is not old enough to be in a child care center. And there were countless and countless stories. Rebecca had cancer, and the doctor, she underwent a surgery. They told her that she needed to take 10 weeks off. She could only take 2 weeks off. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for things to be put in these packages, like, life is still lifing for folks, I don't know how else to say it. It's like people are still living and forced to pick finances over their family, forced to go to work because, we have moms that have lost jobs because they had to stay home and take care of someone sick. Or even, if they had COVID, it's like, hey, we're in a pandemic. And the world says, where are these people? Why can't we find people to work? Because you're firing folks because they don't show up when they call off sick. So, there's so much at stake. But in the meantime, until we fight to get this into a package, people are still having these emergencies, and we should not live life like in this emergency state. We should live life and be able to plan and get in, we're in this self-care revolution, but that's not happening if we can't even take care of the basics. Like Dawn said, other countries, when I worked as a television host overseas, my coworker took paternity leave, and I was shocked. I was like, wait, what is this? You're the first guy that I know that ever took time off. That country paid both sides of my health care, paid both sides of my pension, didn't pay taxes. It was, I love my country here, but it just shows that, U.S., we have to wake up and catch up.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Yes, we have a lot to do to catch up. Yes, I see clapping. Yes, let's do that. Care should have been in this package for a lot of reasons, but to begin with, as I said, we should have had these policies long, long time ago. We know that they are smart investments. Each of these policies, paid leave, childcare, home and community-based care, they have positive returns on these investments. They are good for business, they are good for families, they are good for public health, they are good for economic growth. All of these things, they are tools for racial and gender equity. Passing them would transform this country, create new opportunities for people, particularly women, people of color, people who've been marginalized. But also, I want to point out, this package was immediately, previously had been thought to address the crisis at hand.
That's right.
A pandemic, a caregiving crisis, what has often been called a she-cession. 3 particular things that would have been addressed by these policies. And we didn't do it. And I think if there's one thing we should have learned out of what we've lived through, continue to live through, it's about we need prevention for public health, for economic resilience and security. But also, I wish we had learned from this pandemic the value of humanity and of being there for our loved ones and our families, and how fragile and vulnerable we all are, and how we should center that in our policymaking and our leadership. And that is the vision I wish we had. I know we can get there, and we're going to keep fighting till we do.
I just have to say this. Of the billions of dollars that this country has invested during and since the pandemic, which I am proud of, right, that we stepped up, our country made the investments that we need. Not one of those investments have centered and targeted women of color. Not one of them. The policies that we are talking about now would have finally done that. We haven't done it. And I think it speaks to who this country really values.
Absolutely, and I just have to point out, kind of related to that, these 2 different things. There was infrastructure and now the Inflation Reduction Act. Originally were called the Jobs Package and the Families Package. Says so much right there. And I want to point out, we know, economists have said, the policies we represent that were in the Families Package that got cut would have produced twice as many good-paying, quality, long-lasting jobs than the infrastructure package. So I just want to be real clear. I want everyone to know this. Go back home and tell everyone this. These are economic policies.
I love my brothers in the trades.
Yes.
But the white dudes in the hard hats got theirs, and they get it every single time, right? It is. But we always have to sit back and settle for not getting anything or for getting scraps.
We have to suffer before there's a change that actually happens, and that it's unacceptable.
Girl, we've been
I know.
That's what I mean. We have to suffer. Right. We suffer, and then
we build power.
It impacts the hard hats, and then okay, well then you'll get the crumbs from this, and that's what we keep getting.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, the hard hats need a care infrastructure too.
That's right.
I mean, just like we need to build bridges and roads to drive on to get to work, we have to build a care infrastructure so parents of all genders can go to work, so children can thrive, so care workers can finally earn a living wage, and so our businesses and our economy can bloom. Without the care infrastructure, the hard hats, any kind of hat you're wearing, we are all suffering. And this is something that even Jerome Powell, our Federal Reserve Chair, brought up recently. He was testifying in Congress, and he said, because we don't have a care infrastructure, our international competitiveness is actually failing. And also we know because we don't have a care infrastructure, people are being pushed out of much-needed jobs. That means that we have supply chain issues, which is driving family costs. Because we don't have a care infrastructure, we have family costs going up. We need access to affordable home and community-based services. We need care workers earning living wages. That also, by the way, helps fuel the economy. We need access to affordable child care. We need paid family medical leave. We need these things yesterday, and they are not big asks. This is what's important.
No-brainer.
So many of us are told, are felt, are pushed by our culture to feel like it is our fault if we can't keep our job and juggle everything. It is our fault if we can't pay the bills when we're trying to do everything and raising our children. It is not our fault. When this many people are having the same issues at the same time, we don't have an epidemic of personal failures. We have national structural issues that, importantly, we can and must solve together. And importantly, I talked about the wage gap a little bit ago. One of my favorite policy analysis and the rooms full of policy analysis that tell us that this is a good idea for our families, our economy, and our country, is that when we pass these policies, those wage gaps between moms and non-moms, those wage gaps that are gendered and fueled by racism and structural racism, they narrow significantly. This is such a good policy where we can see that gender justice, racial justice, and economic justice are intertwined and that we can win together. And so I will pass this question now to Jen because I want you to get a chance to answer too. Of course. Yes, why should CARE have been in this package?
Oh,
and
of
why
course.
is our country losing out?
Okay, I'm like, what question? April spoke about this a lot, but home care and the home care workforce is one of the fastest growing workforces in this country and society. We are growing older as a society. We are aging into retirement at faster rates, and we are going to need to be taken care of. We're going to have a lot of people who need to be taken care of, and we are going to need to really build a strong workforce and care economy, and we can't do that if you can't retain workers, if you don't want people, if you can't get folks in the workforce who can also take care of their families. So I think we're in a crisis in that we are aging longer than we ever have before. And we have people who are aging into retirement and they won't have anyone to care for them. We also know, April spoke about this a little bit, a lot of these issues are racialized. Domestic workers, as well as farm workers, were left out of the New Deal in the 1930s. It wasn't equitable. We know why they were left out, because domestic workers are largely women of color, largely women, largely immigrant, and they were left out purposefully. This means that they don't have protections. They didn't have the labor protections that they deserve. So a lot of these things we're asking for are things that we should have gotten. We're fighting for protections that they should have had and trying to right the wrongs. So you think it would be common sense, but it's not. And so that's why it's really urgent.
Thank you. I get the next question for another lightning round of questions and answers from our fabulous panel. And the question is a really good one, and I'm hoping that you all can bring home some of these answers in all the ways. So the question is this: what are the biggest hurdles right now for women and care policies that are stopping them from moving forward? And how do we overcome them as organizers, as agitators, as co-conspirators in taking our country back for what works for us? And I will ask this first question to Ashley.
I feel like I was just talking about this a little earlier in regards to why it should be a priority. It's important because the folks who are most impacted are the ones who have the answers to how to fix it. And so it may have been you, April, that just said this. The way this system works, it makes people feel bad about being in the positions that they're in, as if they created this circumstance. Yeah, sometimes people make bad choices, but the whole system has us all messed up. And it shames us, and so it makes us pull back, and we don't connect, we don't open up, we don't speak out because we feel shame. Like, oh, I can't talk about that because that's my fault, or I should have done this. But in reality, we need you to share your stories, because when you share your story, it's going to connect with someone else that'll be like, oh, wait, it's not just me. No, it's all of us who are in these situations and in these spaces that don't work for us. It doesn't help us to live our best lives. We all want to be able to, if we don't feel good, rest. If we have a family member that needs support, we want to be able to go and help them. And it shouldn't be a matter of, well, I can't help my mom or I can't help my grandma because I can't miss another day of work. Right. And we need each other. Dawn, you said it, especially after this pandemic. If we didn't realize then how much we all depend on each other, my goodness, even when we think about food delivery, like we couldn't go out, but the people who had to come to our front doors to drop off food, they matter. Their experiences matter, and they're not less than because their job is that they go and pick up the food and deliver it to the people who are placing that order. So I think it's important because it's access. we need access to the resources that are going to help us live our best lives. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Ashley, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, at one point when Ashley said, like, you know, it's us women who are suffering, I'm like, you know, we've been suffering, but that's like the whole point of it all, right? To not, because sometimes as a Black woman, I just want to take the day off, right? Mm-hmm. I want to be like, listen, y'all run the country. We're going to all call off today, because it's the same story over and over again. It's nothing new. It's not surprising. When these policies don't pass that center women of color, it's like, okay. Like, you know, I remember something didn't pass, and so many people were so upset. And, like, within my circle, we're like, okay, like, it's not shocking. So when Kristen mentioned, like, to be agitated, to advocate, to rise up. I think that's what, you know, a lot of people have in them. It's like, we know the situation. We know like, we expect for it to be unfair, but there's such a power of voice, right? During this process, when we collected stories from moms, I was telling Dawn right before this that it was more than just like a mom telling her story. These moms who always felt uninvited, overlooked, underappreciated, invisible, they were appearing in the New York Times, on the Today Show. Someone got on a CNN podcast. And what it did inside of people to see that, like, oh, my voice matters, instead of being like, oh, you know, this is unfair, this isn't surprising, I'm just going to continue to just keep pushing and go on. Instead, we're at a time where there's like a shift, where people are saying like, okay, yes, I haven't been at the table, but girl, I'm built my own table. I'm gonna, you know, bring my chair and squeeze in, or if I'm not invited to your table, guess what? I'm gonna make a reservation over here. So I think that's what is happening right now. People are recognizing the power in their voice, and so when something's not passed, it's like, it's going to pass at one point, because like our voices were not going to be silenced.
So I think in terms of obstacles, I have two different perspectives on this. One, which is I hate when people say it was just the one senator or one vote. Because this is not the first time women and people of color have been cut out of a package, as it was brought up. It's not the first time that women were the casualties of compromise. This is a failing of a country, a failing of many systems. So I think it's very clear that we need to build a lot more power. And I think that is what is behind this panel today. Yes. And I think we can, and I think we must. And I think we're on the edge of it. I mean, I think suddenly people are like, oh, well, Kansas, like, women voters matter. We forgot. Like, I think they take women's votes for granted. And I think, you know, we have been under-resourced as a movement. We've been taken for granted. We've been, you know, diminished. But I think we are able to grow that power, and we are. And I think, you know, while I said it's not just about one vote, it also is just one vote away. We came really close to making history. And there is an opportunity. This is a big takeaway I want to leave everyone with today. There is an opportunity ahead of us. We didn't lose. It's not over. We came further than we ever have, and we are so close, and we can still pass these things. We can demand, we can get the votes, we can get the seats, and demand that this be at the top of the agenda, and that it is unfinished business, it is a priority, and it can be passed in another reconciliation package.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to be provocative. I agree with everything that I've heard, but I'm going to be provocative for a second in a room of organizers and campaigners. We follow the playbook. We think of campaigning, particularly campaigning in the political space, as a science, right? You get the polls, you figure out what they say, you target your messaging toward the polls, you go for your likely voters, maybe you do a little bit of persuasion, but when it comes down to crunch time, the hell with them, right? And we are so robotic in so many ways about how we do our campaigning by the playbook. We do not open up our minds around listening to and driving issues that matter. So we elect folks, like we settle for, I'm trying not to call their names, but we you know,
do it, April.
Fuck it. We settle for the Joe Manchins. We settle for the Kristen Cinemas. Like, we settle for these folks, but because we can, you know, say it's a win. But we also settle for not moving the agenda that people really need us to move. And so I just want to challenge us as campaign professionals, as organizers, to think about how we know these issues throughout our campaign polled off the charts, right? Polled off the charts across party line, right? We have Republicans saying, yeah, we want child care. Yeah, we want home care. Yeah, we want paid family leave. But no one drives campaigns around these issues. No one drives campaigns around these issues. And so I just want to provoke us to think about, as we engage as campaigners in this electoral cycle, how are we doing it in ways that push candidates toward standing up for the issues that people really care about? Yes, we got to win. Yes, we got to, protect against the crazies, that are running. But I think little by little, we have to reimagine how we run campaigns, how we organize on the ground to actually move the work to drive the transformation we need.
Yeah.
Thank you, April.
I want to add to what you just said, April, because I don't know how many folks were at the keynote last night with our current Pennsylvania State Rep, Summer Lee. SEIU is a big supporter of Summer Lee, and that is the message. That is how we, in a region like Allegheny County in western Pennsylvania, which is a region that is your blue dog Democrats, where we went out as a community collectively and we spoke to everybody with the same message, because we do all want the same things. And it's really important, like in Kansas, in western Pennsylvania, if we can do that here, we can do that everywhere, and we can't be afraid. It's a fear. We cannot be afraid. What do we have to lose?
That's right, Ashley. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have a hard stop at 5:30. April, I want to ask you a question about home care workers. We know that the workforce is intertwined with a history of racial exclusion I talked about. So I want to know, how do we lift up Black women in the workforce? How do we lift up women of color in the workforce? And how do we really make sure that those jobs are really good jobs?
Yeah. So first I have to say, it is, and I have gotten to know these women and love these women as we've worked to build our Care Can't Wait coalition over the last couple of years. But as a Black woman who's been in this work for over 21 years, it is great to not be the first one to talk about race. And so I just want to applaud Kristen and applaud Dawn for showing us what real allies and co-conspirators look like. And this isn't just how they show up today. This is who they are and how they always show up. But we gotta, to Jen, your question, we cannot be afraid, again, because we run these campaigns where we tell ourselves we can't be explicit, and when we talk about race, bullshit, right? I'm not saying don't be smart. I'm not saying don't be strategic, but there is no racial justice in this country without economic justice. There is no economic justice in this country without racial justice. From the very beginning of the exploitation of the people who occupied these lands to begin with, to the enslavement of Africans, this country has always joined race in our economy. And so we have to tell that truth. We have to be unapologetic about it, and we have to drive the hard questions. This country is built on systemic racism, particularly anti-Black racism. And I believe if we drive and create policies that center Black women, women of color, immigrant women, we solve for all of us. Yep. And so when we look at the work Black women do, like home care, right, like the work that Jen's mother did, it's the work enslaved women did in this economy for generations. Why do home care workers and child care providers earn poverty wages? Because they didn't pay us at first, and now they get away with paying us as little as they possibly can. Right? Let's just be clear about that. And so we have to lift that up. And we have to call it out. And we have to begin to censor them, pass policies that benefit them, but also we have to give them a voice at work. These women cannot just walk into the NLRB and say, hey, I want to form a union. It doesn't work that way. We have to upset the setup, as Michael Tubbs would say, and drive new policies that allow women of color to own their own destiny, to have agency, and I say build the organization so that they can advocate for themselves.
Okay. I'm going to wind us down with some CTAs, and then we'll take some questions from our audience. So a couple of us already gave CTAs, but I guess, like, we have a room for the organizers, campaigners. Like, what do you want to leave them with, and how can they get involved? Dawn, I'm going to go to you.
I was about to Google the number. I think I remember it. 202-224. You're not writing it down. Come on. 3121. Yeah, 202-224-3121 is the capital switchboard. To be honest, I think that's a little bit better than emails these days, although it's all hard. These things do count, though. They log calls. They are required to log emails. You need to make sure that your elected officials hear from you about these things. And then I think everything that we've been saying, which is keep telling your stories. I think because I want to be careful about not straying into the political territory, but these are political issues, and you need to make sure that you are demanding of every candidate what their position is on these, what their commitment is to care, what they'll do to fight for these and for you. And we would love if you want to share your story online, you can do #CareCan'tWait. And all of us will uplift them, I'm sure. And go to our websites. I know we all have take action pages where you can find easy steps. Ours is paidleaveforall.org/take-action. But it's a lot easier. Just go to the homepage and click take action. So I think that's it. Just make sure that your electeds hear from you and the candidates too.
Dawn, I'm not going to repeat the past mistake. I'm going to answer the question myself, and then I'll kick it to you, Heather. So get involved in our movement. Our website is domesticworkers.org, and we'll never stop fighting for care. Right now, we're fighting for federal legislation to protect domestic workers. We're fighting for a Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. We want to make sure that domestic workers all across the country, so nannies, home care workers, and house cleaners have access to benefits, protection from sexual harassment, paid leave, paid time off, access to retirement. And so really get involved in our movement. We need a big, powerful movement. Like, we're just getting started, and CARE is next. I think we made it very apparent. So that would be my CTA, and I will pass it to Heather.
So if you're a single mom, you can join our group, Single Mom Defined, and we connect moms to share their stories with organizations such as...
I'm going to join.
There you go. Moms Rising, Paid Leave for All, different foundations, et cetera. And just letting people know, because I think sometimes we think things are common sense, but they're really unknown because people don't talk about it or have access. For instance, we have to show up beyond Election Day. There's so much to get our moms to the polls, but then also letting them know, like, hey, you voted that person in, and that person, in a sense, works for you. So you can call, and you can email, and you can set up a meeting, and better yet, team up with one of the organizations that are pushing for some of these issues and have resources backing it up and say, hey, I can, our moms, there's just such a wide library of stories where if somebody comes to me and says, hey, we're doing something on reproductive rights, or we're doing something on this, or they're moms who want to participate but not doing it in an exploited way. We pay our moms to do work for us. They come on as consultants, and some volunteer.
That's great.
Ashley?
All right, so I have a few things. The first thing I wanted to share is get folks registered to vote. We need people activated. We need people at the polls. Get folks to run for office. When you are constantly being represented by someone that doesn't represent you, it's time to replace them. Mm-hmm. And there are more of us than there are of them. Mm. And they utilize the opportunity to disengage the community so that they can continue to pass things over us. without us even knowing it's happening. And, also being here with Moms Rising, I love Moms Rising. I think for, moms who have so many different experiences of just living life without any kind of care infrastructure in this country, we have so much to say. We have so much to bring to the conversation. And I think I personally love opening up my emails and seeing petitions all the time, because it one informs you of things that you probably didn't even realize was happening. And then also just putting your name down and letting folks know, like, I don't like this, change it. So sign up for Moms Rising and get in the loop of what's happening in your community, because if it's happening here, it's happening somewhere else too. None of this is isolated. It is intentional and it is purposeful. And we are the only ones that are going to be able to change it by activating more people to be engaged. And it doesn't just happen around election year. We've got to continue to tap into folks all year round, every single day, because that's why they don't trust it, because folks only show up when it's an election year. So
thank you, Ashley. April?
So I would say two things. All of you all have caregivers in your lives, right? Whether it's childcare, home care. Talk to them. Ask them their stories. Help them share their stories. And get to know caregivers, right? Because they really are some of the most amazing folks that you will find. And then this is more general, but there is a worker revolution happening across this country, and I want to encourage all of you to get out in your local communities and to connect with workers who are taking on big corporations to hold them accountable for how they've treated workers. Like, we can no longer let corporations, and I'm inspired by what we're seeing happening at Starbucks and Amazon and Trader Joe's and, these big multinational companies across the world. But right here in Pennsylvania on Monday, 30 nursing homes are getting strike notices because workers are fed up, right? And they're walking out. And that is happening in our communities. I know it just happened at grocery stores in California. Like, workers are on fire. They want to say, oh, it's a great recession and workers are resigning. It is a reckoning. Like, workers are on fire, and they need our support. And so that's what I would love for you all to do.
My call to action is to embrace hope as a discipline each and every day. There is so much messaging around us saying that we can't do it, that we're not enough together. But I'm going to take just a quick moment just about moms alone. And everybody who is a mom, can you raise your hand? Now, everybody who is at every point in your life had a mom, can you raise your hand? Our power is so deep, so wide, and so strong. And we need to make sure that we're bringing these issues into our organizations, into every campaign. As you've heard from the panelists, they are winning issues. Even extreme right Republicans, 76% support these public policy changes. We are on the side of history that is going to win. It's no longer a question of if, but when, but it is an emergency. We know from our lives, we know from our experiences that we are in a state of emergency. And we know in that urgency that we can vote, we can engage our constituencies in these public policies. We can build a broader coalition. We can build that change that we need. You can run for office. We can bring this year 20 people with us to vote, 20 organizations with us to vote. But the key thing through all of this, because I know everybody here has so many powerful tactical tools, is to know that none of us are alone and that we are so strong together. And to embrace that hope every day as a discipline, to keep going, to keep fighting, because together we will keep winning. So thank you.
That's right. Okay, we're winding down our time, but I will take questions. Is there a question? Yes, I'll take you.
So I want to ask, this is really towards April, but I was Stanford as well. I'm with UW.
Hey, now.
But childcare workers taken out of the infrastructure bill doesn't build any infrastructure, because we saw in the pandemic that everyone needed childcare. Childcare providers stayed open. Childcare providers gave their lives during this, and over 5,000 California alone shut down during that. How do we get these other workers, and we keep going to SEIU statewide or international, how do we get these other workers to understand that home care workers, childcare workers are actually the backbone of our economy?
Look, I think it starts with talking to workers, right? UDW, like along with SEIU 2015, are in almost every single central labor council across the state of California. Shout out to Hugo Romero from the LA Fed. But like we gotta go into our labor councils, into other spaces where there are workers and talk about the issue, right? Labor can play a much larger role in making sure these care issues pass, right? And so I just think we gotta get out of our own comfort zone and push and challenge our progressive partners to lift up these issues. As an organizer, labor organizer, we walk into rooms more often than not asking our progressive partners what can they do for us. And I'm not just doing this to like say, woe is me, but labor gets out and fights for immigration. Labor gets out and fights for women's right to choose. Labor gets out and fights for the climate, on and on and on and on. When do you see climate organizers get out and fight for workers? When do you see women's organizers get out and fight for workers? When do you see on and on and on folks get out and fight for workers? These are workers' issues, and we got to start standing in better solidarity with one another.
I'm back and then I'll give you.
So my question is, what do you guys think of Maya McGinnis from the Coalition for Responsible Federal Budget and Nancy Jacobson from No Labels being treated as very serious people when they argue we can't afford these programs and how they're using corporate funding to kill the women's agenda?
You want to take
Well, I will say we talk about this a lot. You do have to name the enemy. And while we don't want to say business is the enemy, because there are a lot of businesses who are on board with these issues, and they know, the smart ones know that's good for their bottom lines. But there were, the chamber, there were corporate interests that did help bury this. So I think that is a challenge that we're going to have to face. I think we are. I think there's a lot of conversations about it. Yeah, there's forces against us, and I think it's about building more power to get it over the finish line. And yeah. And Melissa, I'm sure you have some ideas too to how to help.
I have a question. One of the sponsors of this bill that's in the Senate that's languishing that we're waiting for Senator Chuck Schumer to bring it to the Senate for. I mean, there's so many, obviously. But the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, like Senator Bob Casey, state of Pennsylvania, one of the main co-sponsors behind it. Like, what is it going to take for this bill, similar to like paid leave, where we get to this point, and then how do you get it to the floor? Is it a worker's going to do that?
Look, I think we got to remember the system and the rules that we are up against. CARE was on the agenda because we knew that there was going to be a reconciliation package, right, that would have only required the 50 votes in order to pass. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't really know a day when we feel like we're going to get 60 votes on anything out of the U.S. Senate. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is that we have to get more creative and think about, other than legislation moving through the Senate, how do we get progressive policies passed? So I know on the home care side, we're looking at now what's some executive administrative action that can be taken on by the Biden administration to move things, because the reality is that we just can't count to 60. And not to say we don't have to keep fighting toward that, but we got to find other ways to move progressive policy.
And I think you're talking about pregnant workers, though. I will say that is the one bill that has 60.
Okay.
There's almost, not ours. They have 60. So I would just say, if anyone's listening, urge leadership to put that bill on the floor.
But our senators are like, let's hear from the people. And like, if you have 60, why do you need to hear from us? We've already said we wanted it.
They need more heat. I think they need more heat.
Yeah, okay. Give us more heat. Tell me.
I mean, I believe that bill should go to the floor. I mean, I just, that's a question of the leadership deciding it will be.
So Dawn, if I could tag team on that, if we're pushing or advocating for having that bill be brought to the floor, we've been actually keeping abreast of the numbers, and there's one poll that is on the bill. But how everyone in this room can help is to text to 52886 PWFA. And again,
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to take one more question, then we'll wrap up.
Speaking of like construction, I mean, I don't have an answer to this, but I see a handful of people that seem appear male to me in this room. And I'm a mom. I feel the fire, like I feel it every day. But we know that we win this fight when people feel that this is theirs as well. And it's a bit of a rhetorical question. I'm wondering what you guys think about how we get, paid leave, care. This is not just a women's issue. How do we get more people like that feel that aren't just the moms?
I guess I want to add to that. My husband and I talk about that all the time. And for him as a dad, he had 8 weeks paid paternity leave, and that's not common. And so it's exactly what you just said. I think it's us being very clear and vocal to men that this is their fight too. Because for me, because I do have a partner, I do have a husband at home, when I'm not okay, he's not okay. So in the big grand scheme of things, if we are going to talk about care infrastructure, yeah, it's the moms or the birthing folks who are having the babies, but it takes that whole family unit to be helpful. Just because for families that don't have a male or the partner to have that additional leave, that's further stress in the home, because then the mom is home all day, stressed out, trying to figure it out because they have to do it by themselves because their partner has to go to work. So we've got to call it out and say that. I think just even thinking of a more public conversation, Serena Williams. Her husband has been very vocal about it, and we need more of it, because I would love to see how it moves differently if we get men to be pushing this narrative, because if men had babies, I don't think we'd be having this conversation.
Speak up.
Yeah. And I think if we ask them, right, all the women in the room talk to men to share their stories. We collected a lot of stories from moms because that's our base. However, we had a co-parenting picnic and interviewed dads, and lots of dads, they were surprised that someone wanted to know their opinion about something like this. And so they shared their stories as well. So pulling people in, letting them know that, sometimes society creates these stereotypes in these boxes, but men are also caregivers as well, taking care of parents, sometimes taking care of children just as much as women are. So kind of pulling them into the conversation, because we can definitely, there's a saying, we can go further, faster together.
That's right. Men, share your stories. Our partner organization, Caring Across Generations, had a wonderful campaign. Men have been taken care of. Men are caretakers. And so I think really them getting into the narrative is really important for everyone in the room and everyone streaming as well. I'm going to wrap us up with a big bow. I want to thank my co-moderator. I want to thank the panelists and thank all of you. Me and Kristen have to jet, but I think some of our panelists will stick around if you want to ask questions or anything. But thank you so much.
Thank you.